Thank you. Merci. Martin, if you can, because Martin, you will stay on anyhow. Don't turn it. Hello. Good morning, everyone. I think we are live right now. So first of all, I would like to say so sorry for our interruption last Thursday. That was completely out of our control. The service provider servers has crashed, and then we were completely shut down. Then I would like to thank you for your participation this morning. We are going to resume exactly where we left the agenda. So as a reminder, our agenda, we had a talk by Sylvain Chéry last Thursday. Now Martin Aka, manager at MHP Management, Porsche company, will be presenting for 10 minutes his presentation, and then we will be following with the other speakers that I will introduce later. I don't want to take more time. I will be offline. The floor is yours, Martin. Thank you.
So thank you very much for the introduction and welcome back, everyone. I think the good news is that we crashed the server on a webinar on a Friday or Thursday. So excellent job on there, Luxembourg Innovation, for making that happen, and great to be back. So my topic is how organizations set up for agile work and what it takes to succeed. And I want to invite you to have a look a little beyond the regular agile methodology. So maybe it will take a little less of agile methodology, and in some aspects it will take a little more than just agile methodology. My case comes from my work. I work as a consultant in the field of digital transformation. I'm passionate about process development and organizational development. I work for MHP. We belong to Porsche, the Porsche Group, and Volkswagen. And I consider us as an end-to-end digital transformation consultancy. For more information, just click on mhp.com. Feel free to research and you will find more hints there. And feel free to search me on LinkedIn. I'm very happy to connect and exchange with you further there. I'm going now to introduce to you Audi Denkwerkstatt. Audi Denkwerkstatt is an idea accelerator, I would call it, which was initiated from Audi in Ingolstadt and is a setup to create new ideas in an agile setup in Berlin. So what was the idea when Audi came up with this concept? Just to give you a brief introduction. So as Audi and many other regular companies have a core organization, which here is producing cars and has a very structured way, they call it the core organization. In the core organization, you have very structured processes, you do what you do best, and you regularly do this. And people for a long time in this industrial setup have been trained to stick to the rules. But in order to be more innovative, you need to have a different setup. That's why Audi Denkwerkstatt was introduced. They call it the digital ecosystem. And what I think is meaningful here for you to take away is they don't say it's either or. They say there's a core organization which is sponsoring the new idea and the Audi Denkwerkstatt, which is located in Berlin. And here we have a different framework of working. But how do they do that? I want to introduce this to you very briefly. So Audi Denkwerkstatt is an accelerator set up by 9 people, residents they call themselves, who are inviting their colleagues from Ingolstadt, a batch of 15, up to 15 people, 16 people, every year to come for a sprint for half a year to Berlin. Within this time, they select 15 people who have to apply to be sent to Berlin, and they will work in designated teams to work on a focused field. So currently, Audi Denkwerkstatt, and you are free to just check out their website, is focusing on the generation question. So their search field is to look into mobility aspects of Generation Y, Z, and the baby boomers generation. So this team coming from Ingolstadt goes to Berlin, and they are focusing on this way of working. In this 6 months of a sprint, they are working as a team, and they are cross-functional teams who have to go through the process of Agile methodology, design thinking sprints, and so on, and utilize as well the forces from partners and of Audi and Volkswagen network. And then the group of employees from Ingolstadt, they go back to Ingolstadt and continue working there. So they become ambassadors of this new way of practice and working that they have learned in Berlin. And it's an interconnected, continuous flow of exchange and practice, so to say. Yet this Audi Denkwerkstatt is part of a larger idea. So Audi Denkwerkstatt wants to contribute to the future viability as a premium mobility provider. So Audi and the Volkswagen Group, they are shifting in general, all the core organizations, they say we are a mobility provider. And Audi Denkwerkstatt is not saying, well, we are going to look into food processing. No, we are part of this large strategy to look into new ways of mobility, which are relevant to our core organization. So in order to go in here, you see that they have a mission and a vision. And what are the lessons learned? I hope you take away from this, it takes both structures, core and a digital ecosystem. It takes a clear mandate to work in this environment, like a budget, work transparent, work and communicate between the core and the agile organization. And the participation in such a field is not enforced onto the employees, but more made in a nice and practical way that they say, well, you have to apply a new way of thinking in order to achieve the goals. Further, I want to introduce to you one aspect that is very important to me as a consultant. Why did they choose to go from Ingolstadt away to Berlin? One aspect is to have a little distance from your core organization so you have more free space. On the other side, if you look into Berlin, you see that there's a very, very dense focus on mobility. There's a dense ecosystem. So they actually chose to go to where it's hot and where it's difficult to make maybe a shift. Yet they took this pressure up because they see, well, if we want to really identify customer pains, as you can see on the slide, and we want to build up a digital ecosystem, we have to go where the matter is really hot and boiling and where the pressure is up in order to really get within a condensed time a valid answer on our new ideas. So after they go through this process, they actually have a variation of solutions. So the idea the sprint team is actually designing can become a spin-off, it can become a spin-in, meaning the idea is integrated into the audio product portfolio. It can just become a concept validation, or they just end it, and this is perfectly fine. They say this is okay to just say, well, it's not a valid model to proceed from here, but we check dozens of options here. And so far, in the last 2 years, they had 16 projects and some spin-in and spin-offs. What can you learn from this? Define search fields which are of high relevance. Some say, well, we want to test a little bit with Agile, but not something. No, go for really a lighthouse project of high relevance where you have to say it's critical, it's relevant, and we have to get a result very fast. Only then you can really test the methodology. Understand that there's no practice or best practice. There's only practice. You have to apply in order to learn. When I asked my connecting point to Audi Denkwerkstatt, I said, who brought to you this entire concept that you have built up? He said, well, we came up mostly by ourselves through applying, learning, and adapting. So the only KPI, so to say, that you can actually have is getting things done. And this has to fit into your culture. So don't look for best practice, look for one practice that fits you and adapt it. And really identify where the pressure is geographically on the topic that you work on. Where are other thought leaders? Where is your competition? And jump into this pool there greatly, and then you will get more valid answers. At the neck, I want to show you something that really amazed me. This is a picture that you see right now, is a real picture from Audi Denkwerkstatt. This is one of their sprint teams working in their offices. And when you see that they are working very, very close in close proximity. And this is done on purpose. So you see many post-it notes and ideas, so they have all the information available, but they chose to sit next to each other so that you can make the information of your teammate available, and you have short ways to work together and this increases as well the team pressure. And they take it even one step further. And this is what highlights this to me. They implement here an idea of human factors. The people coming from Ingolstadt going to Berlin, working there for half a year and a year, they live in a shared community. So the people don't only work together closely in an office space, no, they even live together throughout the entire time. So you can imagine Berlin has a crazy party scene, but if you get drunk as a teammate on Sunday and you're not available on Monday to deliver, your team is going to have heavy pressure on you. So last learning session here is create a framework. This is very essential. Don't just go for the methodology. Create a framework like here on social proximity, putting teams very dense together so that they can work together. Request reviews from the relevant audience so that you can have permanent feedback, and foster decision-making power in the team. So they really have to see, where do we go, up or down? Do we continue? Do we take another path? The teams have to be cross-functional, so they have to be reliant on each other. And it takes a resident team, a core team in this Agile framework that clears out all the mandates and red tape, basically, so that the team that is focusing on the sprint can feel in psychological safety, that they can say, well, we have one mission and this is all that matters. We don't have to take care of the red tape. So I hope I was able in a very short time to excite you to really look beyond the Agile methodology, adapt practices to your needs, and get used to the uncomfortable, jump in there and focus on fast value creation. So thank you for your time, and I'm open for questions now and later. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. So there is no question so far, but that is, I think the subjects are so important. People need a little bit of time to get their question. And we have a question from last session. So what I would suggest is to carry on with our next speaker. Going to just share again the agenda with you. And yeah, and then probably, oh, there is a question. Okay, thank you, Natalie. Actually, there are two questions that I'm going to share with you. So the question is, how old were the people from the team? How to do it with families? To you, Martin.
So am I on again?
The question is, how old were the people from the team and how to do it with families?
Well, the thing is that they, when they mission for this is the age ranges from youngsters, young talents, to even head of departments. So there's no age limit. And the other one is, how do they manage with their teams? Is, well, the one thing is that you are mission for half a year. So, well, you should find an agreement with your family and your partner, how you cope with this when you set up for this challenge. And one thing is that, well, you're still flexible. So this being said is, well, probably the arrangement that you can say from Monday to Thursday or Friday we are in Berlin, and on the weekends I come back to Ingolstadt or wherever they live. So you know it's a limited time, but you have a time that you can focus on, almost like a short, let's say, Agile MBA.
Okay, and there is another question that I'm going to share with you. Can you give an example of a successful project?
Yes, there was an example that they said and it became a spin-off. I would have to look up the company and if it's shareable. They came up with an idea to deliver battery packs to BEVs, battery electric vehicles, so that they can be charged in the garage or in public areas, and they would basically deliver it through a bike and plug in your the battery, and this became a spin-off. And they focused on this area, and this is now an own startup. I can provide the link later.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, as I said, I mentioned, if you have any other question that would come later, either by the end of the session, we will try to answer your question, or we by email, and then we will reply to your question by email. So now I am going to call Sylvain Cotton, the co-founder of the How Institute. And Sylvain, he will be talking to us and saying why Agile learning and why it is the key today for business performance. Sylvain.
Okay, thank you very much, Marina. And I also like to thank you to give me the opportunity to participate to this webinar. The How Institute, just 3 words, supports organizations in designing and delivering innovative training, learning, and personal development solutions, also facilitating on-site teams and remote teams during innovation and transformation processes, and in designing governance and technology environments for supporting new management, leadership, and business models. So far, so good. So, for the last 200 years, business was about doing the same thing better and better. It was an economy driven by scalable efficiency. So if you learn to do the same thing better, you get some competitive advantage. In other words, you could decrease your costs, and that was the reason why you got this competitive advantage, because you had the time. Now everything changed, you know, so it's not the same thing anymore. Cars become driverless, intelligent, taxi companies will be driven by technology, tech platforms, etc., etc. So what happened? We are facing exponential business transformation, and we entered the 4th industrial revolution, as we all know, driven by all these digital technologies and cyber-physical systems, and also inducing eruption of traditional business models and emergence of completely new business models and opportunities. And the same applies to management models. We just heard about it. Agile, flat hierarchies, self-organizing teams. And at the same time, customers have higher expectations for personalized solutions. The consequences are shorter half-time of human skills in general and higher importance of soft skills as well. And in other words, our adaptability quotient will soon become the primary predictor of our personal successes. So there are also some longer-term contextual shifts that accelerate as well, like political outcomes are becoming more unpredictable and disruptive. International institutions are becoming less stable. Social inequality is on the rise. Same for ecological risks, and also shifting generational values are reshaping the nature of consumption. And social backlash to business is occurring more frequently on larger scale, and technology is also changing the skills that are required of workers, as well as the nature of work itself. So these non-competitive issues are becoming both less predictable and more relevant for long-term company performance, demanding correspondingly more attention, of course. Not to mention what we are in here. So that's the only thing I want to show about it, but which really gives sense. We all know in the meantime the VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. If you apply it to the managing the corona crisis, be it as a business or as a society, the environment demands react quickly to ongoing changes that are unpredictable and out of your control. The environment requires you to take action without certainty. The environment is dynamic and with many interdependencies, and the environment is unfamiliar outside of your expertise. Everything applies to what we're witnessing right now. So when it comes to organizational design, everything, so including technology, is changing at this exponential rate, which requires us to learn much faster as humans than we have ever had before. And the behaviors we have owned for decades will become obsolete in a few short years. And but these traditional organizational hierarchies can only react slowly and have limited decision-making bandwidth. So on the other hand, quick and agile learning bypasses traditional managerial hierarchy that has traditionally defined our companies. So, but if properly designed, companies become self-tuning, sensing changes in the market immediately, and be able to respond quickly. This may be uncomfortable for some executives who came of an aging area dominated by managerial decision-making. So what happens? Scalable learning is replacing scalable efficiency as the single most important parameter for performance and resilience, learning faster than competitors. And what does that mean for the learning and development function in HR? Well, traditional formal learning has some challenges. These traditional classroom settings, they are one size fits all and are not tailored to the individual learner's needs. Too generic, not timely. Learners more and more complain about not having the time anymore to quit the workplace for day-long trainings, and those who have the time are sometimes considered as less engaged. They are also expensive and not well scalable. They are sometimes used by the C-level for presenting shining data about how they care about their employees. And also many studies show that after 1 month, learners on average only remember 10% of what they have learned in a formal training. And new knowledge that is not applied within a very short time gets forgotten again. Therefore, learning on the job works best. So what does that mean for didactics? What we see is that empowerment didactics is replacing traditional teaching didactics. What is the difference? Empowerment didactics creates a framework of offerings, possibilities, and opportunities for learning and skills development. So the aim here is to equip learners with all the necessary tools and processes to learn independently or in groups of peers, just in time, and in the flow of work, and according to actual problems to be solved in the current work context. On the right side, you see an illustration showing different types of tools. I'm not going into the details here. You see what I mean. So this brings us to the concept of agile learning. Today, learning already has become as colorful as a rainbow. So we have from 5-minute micro-learning to full-time scams. We have analog, digital, hybrid, blended, self, peer, group, social learning, various methods and formats. Also a holistic approach to learning, the mindset, the skill set, and the tool set have to fit. And we have continuous setups like journeys, safaris, etc. So what is agile learning? Different learning formats, digital and non-digital, within a designed frame of possibilities, partially location and time independent, where learners can define their individual learning curricula following emerging and contextual needs, where learners can learn autonomously in the flow of work as competent needs arise, alone or in groups of peers from inside and outside the organization, and where each member of group helps others to achieve their competence targets under the loose supervision of a learning path coach when needed. We already do it in our private settings. You know, if your coffee machine is broken, then you go to YouTube and see, watch a little video, and you just acquire the skill to repair your coffee machine the moment you need it, and it works. So why not translate it to company settings? So agile learning gives more autonomy and responsibility of learning to the individual learner for his personalized learning paths. It's like learning on demand. Agile learning is blended, social, experiential, often happens through active work and experimentation. It also consists of these different formats: micro-learning, short tutorials, macro-learning, larger curricula. Some classroom learning still will be there, of course, and individual coaching and mentorship. And then, very interesting, there is a whole bunch of new formats for learning, like working out loud circles, communities of practice, learning expeditions, job rotations, expert interviews, onboarding processes, bar camps, hackathons, fab labs, innovation labs. All these are tools for agile learning environments. Agile learning also requires external content as well as content generated within the organization. And the role of the traditional classroom teacher is also evolving towards the role of a learning path coach. And not every traditional teacher will be able also to make that transition. Also, agile learning makes extensive use of new collaborative and distributed technologies like these learning management systems, learning experience platforms, but also enterprise social networks. I'm not going into the difference of the LXPs. It's like a subject on its own. Agile learning also increases employee engagement, satisfaction, motivation, experience, and performance. And that's where agile learning gets back to agile, or makes the link to agile management, which is the new management paradigm for the VUCA world, and in which we constantly create customer and brand value in self-organizing teams that are connected through transparent, interactive, and open networks within loose hierarchies and using the latest collaborative technologies. So agile learning thus requires the agile mindset to work out. That's my last slide. What we have learned: business and technology is changing at an exponential rate. Non-competitive societal and environmental contexts get more unstable and predictable as well. In the VUCA world, thus the ability to learn and react fast becomes mandatory. Scalable efficiency is being replaced by scalable learning as the single most important driver for organizational resilience and performance. Traditional formal learning settings alone are not suited anymore for dealing with this new reality. New, more holistic and dynamic learning frameworks and tools need to be put in place in order to deal with these challenges. And for Agile learning to work, organizations also need to adapt their culture towards more transparency, collaboration, less hierarchies, etc., the characteristics of Agile organizations. And last but not least, better individual learning opportunities increase worker and employee engagement, which makes HR more important in the future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Silva. So we have a question for you. I'm going to share it. So the question, pragmatically, how does Agile learning differ from traditional apprenticeship?
Yes, well, Agile learning also requires this organizational setting of Agile management or Agile teams to work out, and which is not necessarily the case in traditional apprenticeship. So a lot of autonomy to people and much more self-initiative, etc. Also, Agile learning, of course, is somehow linked to the use of also all these new types of technologies, and not only of the processes and methods, but it's not the technology alone. Only the technology won't enable Agile learning, but it's an important part in it, which makes it a new mix.
Okay. I hope that answer indeed the questions. So no more questions as for now. There are questions for our other speakers. Just as I mentioned, we will go through all the questions coming by the end of the session. Now I would like to introduce our last speaker. But before that, just I would like to recap. Our three consultants, they really talked quickly about how the experimentation enabled team to innovate smarter, how to build a structure for Agile team, and what is Agile learning, and what is important for business performance. Piero Cavigliasso, he is the Guala Closure Group Innovation Technology Director, is going to provide us a testimonial. He's going to tell us how an Agile organization, in their case, has been helping of reducing steps and timing in the innovation value chain. So, Piero, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, and good morning, everybody. I was trying to concentrate in a few minutes a story that actually is quite longer. So, do you see my screen? Okay. So, yeah, it's something that I can explain in a few slides, but I would like first of all to introduce, because it's quite important to introduce to all of you what we are actually doing as a Guala Closure Group. So you see in these slides a lot of spirits. We don't do spirits, but we do the closures for them. So what you see on the top of these bottles is made by us. We produce 15 billion of these caps every year. We have 30 plants around the world, and we are about 4,500 people. So we are one of the biggest producers of caps in the world. So sometimes I get this question, but is there R&D to be done on caps? Yes, there is. And I put on this slide one example of how complex or complicated can be a closure of a spirit, because a closure is not only to close a bottle, but it can also be for protecting from counterfeiting, etc. So we do a lot of research, and normally this research has, let's say traditionally, this research has some goals. We do research to improve the anti-counterfeiting features, and we do research to improve aesthetic features of bottles, or to have new processes which are helping us to reduce cost. And here I come to the point. In the last 2 or 3 years, we started to develop a totally new concept of CAP. And if you see in this slide, you see some examples of what we call the connected caps. So a connected cap is a cap inside which a chip is introduced. And thanks to mobile phones, the consumer can get connected to platforms in order to authenticate the bottle, to get all the information from the brand, and to be engaged by the brand. So as you can understand well, we moved from one kind of product that had nothing to do with digital to a new product in which there is a lot of technology, of new technology inside. So there is a chip inside using RFID technology that you can read with your mobile phone without apps. You get connected to an IoT platform. In some cases, these caps are registered on a blockchain registration platform. Of course, consumer, by tapping the bottle, they give to the brand the big data, which have to be managed. And this is digital marketing, and this is CMS, etc. So all these new words made everything different, not only different, but also more complicated for us. And because of the new technologies that we introduced, as you see, I have been listing just some of them. So NFC, which is radio frequency technology, Internet of Things, blockchain, big data. This is from the technology side. But they also introduce a new business model in the world of closures for wine and spirits. And these new business models are in the area of digital marketing, consumer engagement, track and tracing, and we had also to build in favor of our clients some additional services like online on the bottling line. We had to introduce online reading systems in order to track the identity of the bottles. So in the chart that you see on the right on my screen here, you see that what we have done before, it was mainly in the area of incremental innovation. So to innovate a cap for its aesthetic appearance belongs to the area of incremental innovation. If you innovate adding a new technology, you are in the area of breakthrough innovation. Or if you innovate in the area of new business model, you are also in the breakthrough innovation. But if you have a combination of the two, you go in the area of radical innovation. And this created a problem. This problem was in two areas. The first was in the area of the dialogue with our clients. So we started to go to the brands, like I give you example, Jameson or Macallan Whiskies brands. And our sales force had serious difficulties in explaining this new technology that we were going to offer. You know, normally in the sales, the salesperson is used to work in a comfortable zone in which he knows everything about the product, the features, the price. He is able to explain how and why is better than previous products. And the purchasing is normally asking the typical questions: is it cheaper, etc. So here we were in a completely new era of dialogue, in which the traditional pathway was not working anymore. It was extremely difficult for our sales force to explain to the purchasing of our client everything. And so in this slide, you see a typical value chain, and you describe here the typical innovation actors. You know, the sales manager is talking to the purchasing manager. The purchasing manager has to talk to the brand manager and then to the marketing manager. And on our side, traditionally, the sales manager was going back to the project manager and the R&D manager. So this innovation channel was extremely slow and extremely ineffective. So we had to start a completely new dialogue, which also involved the completely new people in this value chain. So I finally managed to meet a totally new kind of managers, which was in the case of one of the most famous brands. It was called Digital Acceleration Manager. So, and together we started a dialogue that immediately after involved a lot of actors in my team and in the client team. So brand protection, IT manager, logistic managers, production managers, marketing managers, and on our side, new type of researchers like RFID researchers, etc. So a totally new kind of value chain in the management of innovation. So what we managed to get from this new involvement of different stakeholders was an extraordinary set of inputs, which allowed us to go on with our research activity in a very and with reduced timings. So in this slide, you see an example of what we were able to do. You see from 2016 to 2018, we had, are you still with me? Because I got a strange message in my screen.
Yes, you are.
Okay, all right. No, yeah. Because I got a message that the connection was not perfect. So as you see here, and I'm going to conclude in a couple of minutes, as you see here, for quite a long period, we had a difficult and sterile discussion with the wrong contacts at the client, on the client side. So we were not able to meet the right people in order to complete our research activity. Then when we started to talk with the right people, so the digital innovation managers, etc., we did a very effective work, which thanks to this work, we managed, if you see, we managed to go in less than 1.5 years from the first meetings until the large volume production and the large volume bottling at our client premises with the first connected caps. But I also want to underline another element in which we have been at the beginning not effective in our digital innovation activity. If you see here, we made a long attempt in developing an IoT platform in-house by ourselves. I don't know if you are familiar with IoT platform, so that stands for Internet of Things. And we started with the support of some external consultants to develop this platform. But at the end, we understood that outsourcing, so to buy versus make, was a much better solution. And thanks to this, we also entered into the capital as shareholders of one startup doing IoT platform. What are the lessons learned in this activity? So to manage radical innovation in completely new fields, like it was in this case, we needed a new type of dialogue involving new counterparts. We needed internally completely new type of skills. So not only in terms of R&D skills, but also in the terms of sales forces. We needed new sales representative able to sell these kind of products. So R&D managers enabled to be in direct contact with client can get extraordinary inputs to manage R&D in the right direction. And last, buy versus make, in some cases, can be the right solution, especially when you are not working in your comfort zone area, like in this case, in which we were working on digital aspects, which were not our core competencies. So this was my very short presentation, making a long story short, and I will be happy to answer to questions if there are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Piero. That was really a great story and a great case study to show how Agile is important. And it is not that a buzzword that a company needs to really use. It is a real need, as it was presented by our consultant and as you presented as something that you have indeed implemented. So we have questions. Indeed, I will start with the first one. So how did you introduce the transformation innovation in the mindset of employees to achieve performance?
Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So I don't know if we finished to do this, because it's a process that requires time. We also had to employ new people with the right skills. And to give you an example, in addition to employing new people with new skills, we are in this period organizing a training for all our sales forces around the world to enable them to present these new kind of products to the market. So to answer to the question, we did some efforts already by employing new people, and we did and we are now doing a lot of training of the people already in the organization to prepare them to talk about the new products, talk about the new innovation, etc.
Okay, thank you. Another question, so I'm going to share it. I see a brand protection manager at the client side, but no protection manager on your side. And the use of an open innovation platform. Did you secure insight in your innovation, or did your client, or can any of your cap manufacturing competitors now emulate your IoT cap?
Yeah, protection is very important in several under several points of view. For instance, the cap that I show you here, so this one is on the market. It has been patented, so we were able to patent the technology of cutting the aluminium to create the space for the radio frequency to be transmitted. And this was a recognized patent, so it's a way to protect us against competitors. On top of that, there is another aspect, so we should protect us by possible mistakes, and we are talking about big data here. And as you know, big data about consumers, they are strongly regulated by GDPR, new European regulation. And so from our side, we also had to employ people or to get consultants with a lot of experience in that area, and to reduce any kind of possible risk in even under this legislative point of view.
Okay. And so one more last question, Pierrot. Can you already say whether this investment paid off in terms of profit or revenue increase?
This is still to be understood. Honestly speaking, the launch of the first products has been relevant in terms of numbers. So we are the ones that put more digital connected bottles on the market so far. We're talking about millions of bottles, mainly in the United States. So there was already a significant payback of this investment. Of course, this has to go on, and digital caps should become more like a standard. In that way, it will certainly be an extremely rewarding activity for us.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thanks to all our speakers. Now, before we have two more questions, one for Sylvain Chéry from last week and another one for Martin. But before that, I would like to share what we are going to see next Thursday. Sorry, I'm looking for my media. Here we are. So next Thursday, 23rd, we will be actually starting the section number 2, which is the section dedicated how to acquire new markets with a new focus. And the first part of this section is about a new business model. So we will have speakers, so from EY, Brice Lecoustet, he is going to present us the new business models in a supply chain process. We will have Julien Zins from CPI. He will be presenting also the new business model of a digital continuity, actually. And from IBM, Ben Hererdal, so he will be present us the new business model 4.0, and we will end again as every episode with a case study. This time it will be a story that Luc Azilino will tell us about Interlex Auto and how they completely changed their new business models. So questions, I would like to back to the questions actually. So please register right now. Natalie will share with you a button. Then you can click and register for our next episode on Thursday, 23rd. Question for you, Martin. So how do you integrate the communication expert in Agile methodology?
Well, how would I integrate the communication expert is, in my understanding, organization and social systems consist all of communication. And the question would be, how does it build on your legacy? As Sylvain has showed, you know, that you can say, well, we come from a industrial past, but now VUCA is all around us, so we have to adapt. So you have to build a consistent storyline. And the second part is, I would address how Agile is helping in a relevant context the employees to be more effective, and that there's an alignment between the interest of the company to earn money and the interest of the employee to stay employed in this context. This is how I would recommend to build up this integration.
Okay, thank you. And now I have a question from last week to Sylvain Chéry. Sylvain, the question was, what is the main tool for Agile team? You know, when you presented the Agile team and why the experimentation is important.
Yeah, good morning. Well, I've seen the other speakers this morning, Martin and Piero in particular. They made a good point about how to answer that question. And maybe I would like to share, if you allow me, Martin, to I took a screenshot of one of your slides. When you look at this picture, what do you see? I mean, a lot of people working with agile teams may say, oh, there are lots of post-its. So the main tool of an agile team seems to be post-it notes. Well, actually, what I see in this picture is a group of people having face-to-face conversation, and that's exactly, for me, the main tool of an agile team. And Piero also emphasized the importance of creating a new type of dialogue between them and their customer. So face-to-face conversation is really how an agile team will construct a shared vision first of what they need to achieve, and a shared understanding on what to build and how to build it. So for me, this is really the main tool. Everything else, like post-it notes, facilitation, and visual management, whatever, it's all there to just to make those conversations more efficient, more richer, and yeah, getting more results out of those conversations.
Absolutely, creative and bold, because this is actually what we will. The Agile is about letting the creativity of people that are discussing together face to face. Okay, thank you very much. We are on time, a little bit more, but that's very interesting. And we would like, again, to thank our speakers for their availability, flexibility. I mean, we changed a lot, and thanks to put this time in their agendas. These are short introductions. If you have, or if you need to extend the discussion, please feel free to contact us or to get back to our speakers, and then take more in details, you know, the discussion further. Again, thank you very much. Please do not forget to register for next Thursday, and we are looking forward to see you all. Thank you. Thanks again. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.